Welcome back to the AndroidAppTraining.com online course. In this video, we're talking about creating a list using the list picker element. And we're going to be creating two lists in this app. One that links out to websites, or you could certainly link out to specific web pages within a website, and another list that links out to a list of Google Maps. And they are set up a little bit differently in the blocks editor, so we're going to take these one at a time. Alright, so before we get going, I want you to remember that for our upcoming events, which is going to be our list of websites containing the upcoming events for our app, we have a corresponding activity starter, which I've named Events Activity Starter, and we always need to remember if we're going to link out to a website that we need to type in our action box here, android.intent.action.view. Okay, so now that we have that set, let's go check out our blocks editor and figure out how to create a list. Now when you're creating a list, you need to start by creating two definitions. And so you want to go to the built-in tab, click on definitions, and click on this definition variable. And we're actually going to take two of those here. And you'll see why in a second. And these are actually what we're going to use to create our lists. In this case, our list of events and our list of URLs. Let's start by renaming these so we can tell the difference between our list and our list of URLs. I'm going to call this first one Events List. And I'm going to call the second one Events List URLs. Okay, so we have our lists defined here. Now the next thing we need to do is go to the list area and pull this one down called Make a List. And I'm going to do that one for each. Now in order to make our list, we just have one last thing to add, and that's going to be a text box. In this app, I'm going to have 3 locations for events and 3 corresponding URLs. So I'm going to go ahead and copy 3 more of these, and I'm just going to plug them in here. Okay, so I need to rename these, and this is my events list. So I'm going to name these with the actual names of the events. So I'm going to go Chicago event, I'm going to call this one the New York event. And we'll call this one the Los Angeles event. Okay, so next I'm going to go find my corresponding URLs. And it might be nice if you actually look at this from this perspective. So we have our events list here. And now when we start copying and pasting our URLs in here, this first URL is going to correspond to the Chicago event. This next one is going to correspond to the New York event, and so on. So I'm going to go out and just grab some random URLs that have to do with these cities, and I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see, I've plugged in our URLs here, and what I actually did was went out and just grabbed the tourism websites for each of these cities. Explore Chicago, I Love NY, and Discover Los Angeles. Now obviously when you create your own app, you're going to create whatever list you want and go out and find the corresponding URLs and just plug them right in here. Alright, so now that we've created our lists, I'm going to pull these down here, and I wanted to show you one thing. You'll always have under the My Blocks tab a Screen 1 area. And this is essentially the home screen or the main screen. So whenever somebody opens up your app, whatever's on screen 1 will show up immediately when they enter your app. Now it's important to note that when you create a list, if you ever have a list in your app, you need to pull out this screen1.initialize and go and find your list picker, which in this case is essentially a button, but we use the list picker element. And we've got our events list picker here, which is what we're working with. And you want to find that list picker.elements. And you want to plug that in there. And then you want to go find your events list here, or whatever you've named your initial list. Not your URL list, your initial list. And you want to plug that in right here. So when the screen 1 initializes, it's essentially getting this events list picker ready to rock. And so we created these as definitions. So under the My Blocks tab, you'll find them in the My Definitions area. And you'll see Events List right here, and that'll plug right into the end. Now you'll see later when we add our Google Maps list that we're going to add another set of blocks right underneath these for the new list picker and the new definition that we create for the new list. Okay, so we've got our screen one initialize ready to go. Now the next step is to tell our list picker or our button what we want it to do. So we're going to find our events list picker and choose Events List Picker after picking. This is very similar to when you have a button on your app. You want to choose the when the button is clicked block, pull that out, and then tell App Inventor what you want to happen after that button is clicked. In this case, we want, after picking the Events List Picker, which is essentially a button, what's going to happen. So we'll pull that out. All right, so we need to tell our activity starter what it's going to be doing. So we're going to go find our Events Activity Starter, and we're working with URLs in this case. So again, we're going to use the Events Activity Starter.data URI, and we'll plug that in here, and we'll start creating our list options. And that's under the Built-in tab. You want to click on Lists, and you want to find the block called Select List Item, and plug that into the end here. Now the list that we want to call from our Select List Item is going to be our Events URL list, which is right here, Events List URLs. And we're going to find that under My Definitions because we created that. And we'll find the Events List URLs and we'll plug that into the list area here. Now when we create our index here, we're going to actually go back to the list area and we're going to choose the Position in List block. We'll plug that in the index here. Now the thing in this case has to do with our list picker. So we're going to go back to our events list picker. And what we want to find is what's called events list picker dot selection. And actually this is the one that's going to plug in here. So we'll pull that in to the thing. And then for our list, we want to direct App Inventor to our events list right here. So we're going to go back to My Definitions and we'll pull out the events list. We'll plug that in the end. And now we're ready to go here, except for, remember, anytime we have an activity starter, we need to tell it to start the activity after all of these events have taken place. So we'll go back to our events activity starter and pull out the .start activity, plug it in the bottom, and we should be ready to go. So now if we pull in our emulator, we'll be able to see what we just created. So we're going to click on upcoming events. This button is actually our list picker. We just created a list for that. So when we click on it, we'll see that a nice list shows up here, and again, that's the list that we created right here. Now when we click on these, we're going to get the corresponding URLs. So let's go ahead and click on the New York event. And now we see that the iloveny.com URL that we pointed to in our list shows up.